Hi, I'm Lindsay Lynch. I am the book buyer for Parnassus Books in Nashville, Tennessee. And what that means is that I am the person who is in charge of buying the books. Basically, I have been an indie bookseller for a very, very long time. I was originally hired at Parnassus in 2014 as part-time seasonal help. And look at me now. Over the course of working at Parnassus, I've become what I refer to as kind of like a Swiss Army knife of booksellers. I learned a little bit of everything in the store. I've been a bookseller, I've worked as a special orders manager, I've been social media, I've been a sideline buyer. I've worked at other indie bookstores too and done an oddball of assorted jobs there as well. I've been a programs coordinator for an indie bookstore. I've been a book of the month selector. So pretty much I have done a little bit of everything, which is a very good way to become a book buyer because you are doing a little bit of everything and you need to know a little bit of everything, both in terms of the logistics of the job, the actual process of ordering the books, but also the more kind of intangible aspect of the job, which is knowing which books to bring in, having a hunch for what's going to be the biggest book of June, and being able to kind of gauge those trends. You sort of have to do it for a long time before you learn those skills. If you had ever told me that I'd have to do this much math for my job, I would have been just flabbergasted, and so would every math teacher I've ever had. So a lot of it is looking at sales figures. The best example of this is if there's a big debut novel coming out in June, I would have to be able to have a comparable sales to look at. So that's where you have comp titles. So a lot of it is looking at what has sold in the past, like what have our customers loved before, what books have been huge hits for us. And a lot of how I get that information is a combination of, we have sales reps who come into the store. I get to see catalogs for each big publisher of books that are coming out. Again, it's usually 4 to 6 months ahead of time when I order the books. And our sales reps will talk about the books that they're really, really excited about. And we have wonderful sales reps. We're very lucky in that regard, who genuinely know our store and they know our customers. We tend to veer very heavy towards literary fiction, which is great for me because that's what I love to order. So a lot of our sales reps know that, when they're pitching us like the 5 biggest books on their list, they're gonna wanna go heavy on the literary fiction titles, whereas like the latest blockbuster political science book that's coming out, we might sell a couple, but it's not really our wheelhouse. A funny thing about the job is that I am always reading probably 4 to 6 months into the future, which is really fun for me, but it also means when I go out on the floor and somebody's like, could you recommend me a book? I'm like, oh, here's a great book. It doesn't come out until August. This happens at least once a week to me because I'm so excited about the books that haven't been published yet, because it's my job to be excited about the books that haven't been published yet. If I had to make everyone read a book, I would make everyone read Life on Mars by Tracy K. Smith. I was a later in life poetry lover. After years and years of schooling and being like, I don't know if I understand reading poetry, it always felt like this really difficult and intangible thing. I usually give this to people as a gateway to loving poetry book. It's about grief, it's about space travel, it's about David Bowie. It's gorgeous. If I could make everybody read a book, I would make them read Life on Mars. So 2021 was a bananas year for me. I started 2021 living in DC. I'd moved there after grad school. I was born and raised in DC, so post-MFA, it made sense for me to go back home for a little bit. DC wasn't the best fit for me, so when Karen Hayes gave me a call and said, would you consider moving back to Nashville to be our book buyer, I didn't need to put that much consideration into it. Nor did anybody in my family. My parents literally set up a U-Haul within a week and got me out here as quick as possible, which is saying a lot because they're the ones who live in DC. So I started working as a book buyer here February 2021. And All that time, I had also been working on a novel and trying to get literary representation. So the first step in getting a novel published is you have to have a literary agent. So I had been trying for probably a year or two to get an agent. I had rewritten the entirety of my novel in 2020. Not something I recommend doing, rewriting your entire novel in a pandemic. But I loved this book and I wanted to fight for it, so that's what I did. A couple months after moving back to Nashville, I was put into contact with a literary agent through a couple of writer friends here and ended up signing with her summer 2021. Went through rounds of revision on the book, and at this point the book had been written, rewritten, revised. So it was putting in that last push of edits and revisions with my agent, and then the book sold right at the end of 2021. The book went to auction, which was beyond my wildest dreams. I had 3 different publishers put in bids on the book, which was really, really exciting. I mean, I, in my wildest dreams, wanted one publisher to want to buy my book. So to have 3 different editors reach out was really surreal. So my novel, Do Tell, which is historical fiction, ended up selling to Doubleday Books for publication summer 2023. Do Tell follows a gossip columnist in early 1940s Hollywood named Edie O'Dare. At the start of the novel, Edie is a character actress with 3 months left in her contract and confidence that her contract will not be renewed. So while she's been in Hollywood, she moonlights as a source for a gossip columnist. When the time comes for her to find a new line of work, she decides to become a gossip columnist herself. And in the process, she ends up in the middle of a very divisive trial when an actor from her former studio is accused of sexual assault. Edie is forced to take sides. She has to make some really problematic decisions that she has to sit with the damage that she's done. So it's a novel about all the glitz and glamour of 1940s Hollywood, the big personalities, the dresses, the rumors, the gossip, the scandal, but it's also about systems of power. And when those scandals do happen, who gets to walk away unscathed and who has to suffer the consequences. It was pretty weird because in my job, I have a lot of access to information that your average early career debut author does not have access to. I know about every single imprint of every publishing house. Very, very much know every publishing house's shipping times. So I know how quickly they can get a book back in stock. It's kind of weird, smaller technical details that most people don't think about, but I happen to know as a part of my job. So it was interesting to go into these conversations with editors and kind of have this knowledge about their imprint and their publishers in my back pocket. It's funny, I feel like for a very, very long time, I wouldn't tell people I wanted to be a writer. And when I think about it, I think it's because when I was a kid, to me, writers were the ultimate celebrities. I worshipped writers growing up. So I feel like throughout my childhood and adolescence, I would never tell people I wanted to become a writer because in my mind, that was saying I want to become the world's greatest pop star or something, or a movie star. So I definitely always wanted to become a writer. I also studied art for a long time. The two were always in a nice conversation with each other, but when it came down to it in, post-college, my adult life, I always like to do art. It's something I care about, but it's really just something I do for myself, whereas writing, I could go months without doing art. I'd be fine. I can't go months without writing. It's just something I have to do. I have the unfortunate thing where I prefer to write when I wake up, which most people assume means I'm somebody who likes to wake up early. I am not somebody who likes to wake up early. In my dream world, I would get to wake up at 9 or 10 and not be useful to the world until noon, but I have to order books for the store every day. Those orders have to come in by 11:30. So I have had to recondition myself to be one of those people who wakes up at like 5 in the morning. It's the last thing I ever wanted to be, was a person who wakes up at 5 in the morning to write. But I love writing and I love my job, and I would like to keep both of those things. A typical weekday for me starts off with waking up at an ungodly hour that no person should ever have to wake up at to do my writing. And then between writing, getting ready, arriving at work, I usually have to do store orders every morning. So when I say that, I mean I look at the sales for the day before. I see every single book that people have bought the day before. I decide what to bring back in and in what quantity. And usually that goes until about 11 or noon. And then the rest of the day, it could be an assortment of things. Sometimes I'm going through catalogs from our publishers to see which books that haven't come out yet to bring into the store and do orders for those. Sometimes I'm going through, one of my jobs is I handle our local author submissions. So sometimes my afternoons will be going through local author submissions and reaching out to our local authors and asking them to drop off books or telling them we're ordering their books. Sometimes it's just general store maintenance. I'm just shelving, checking the tables, checking stock. Sometimes I'm just playing with Barnabus. I always wanted to have a shop dog because the shop dogs of Parnassus is like the greatest tradition in the world. I hadn't really planned on getting one so quickly. I feel like I literally came back here and then 2 minutes later was like a small child going up to their parent, going up to my boss and be like, hey, so what would happen if I brought a puppy in? In terms of his name, I actually let the store vote on his name. I felt like this was kind of a bartering. Like, if I'm gonna bring a puppy into the store, at least I'll let everybody have a say in what his name is. So the store got to vote on his name, and there were some funny write-in options. I went with old man names because he looks like an old man. So Barnabus, Bartleby, Oliver, I think Marley or Marlowe. He couldn't have Marley because we already have a Marley. I think the popular vote might have actually been Oliver, but then I picked him up to take him home. And he was Barnabus. So I kind of electoral colleged the store vote, and I named him Barnabus.